We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. A playground for some. For others, it's where they make their living. But the sea's unpredictable. It can change in an instant.
The sea takes no prisoners. You always have to be prepared for the worst.
The sea is a beast. If you weren't anxious about it, you're not doing the right job.
The water was freezing.
I was thinking I was going to die.
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of over 5,000 ordinary people, ready to leave their jobs, their families, and race to our rescue.
Steady, steady. Go for it.
When the pagers go off, your heart stops. Is this a life and death situation?
In the water. You're okay, pal. Let go of the sail, mate. Let go of the sail.
Even that 1 second could make a huge difference to someone at home. 1 minute they've got a son or a daughter, the next minute they may not.
There we go. Anvil, high five. Well done. Nice one.
I didn't think we'd get them back. I was just thinking, just please.
Are you the parents?
The lifeboat crew, without them, there's no doubt about it, we'd have lost our girls.
Equipped with their own cameras,
Am I switched on?
It's on.
the crews give us a unique insight into every call-out, as only they see it.
Good stuff, that's it.
Speeding into the roughest storms, searching for people who may only have moments to live.
Gotcha.
For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
If something goes wrong, you could be the only person between them and death.
The seaside resort of Swanage lies on the eastern edge of the Dorset coast. Over 160,000 tourists visit every year. And on a hot summer's day, the town and its gently sloping sandy beach are always packed.
Swanage is one of those old-fashioned Victorian towns where from sort of Easter to the end of September, especially the school holidays, it can be crazy busy, you know, nowhere to sit on the beach because it's full up. And that shows for lifeboat shouts as well. It really peaks for us in the summertime.
The Swanage Lifeboats patch includes 25 miles of the Jurassic Coast, a dramatic stretch of shoreline created over 195 million years ago.
We've got, variations from steep cliffs to sandy beaches. A lot of our beaches are nice and safe for the kids to play on, and then you've got some amazing walks along the coast as well.
The rugged cliffs around Swanage aren't just popular with holidaymakers and walkers, they're also a draw for adrenaline junkies.
When you go along the cliffs on a nice summer's day, they're literally sort of strewn with climbers, really, from top to bottom. There are a lot of variations in difficulty of climbs here, from real beginners through to some fairly complicated free climbs that people do. There's something for everybody, really.
A hot July day. Swanage Lifeboat Station receives an emergency call from the Coast Guard.
It was in the mid-20s, it was really warm, the sea was crystal clear and dead flat.
When it's a hot sunny day and flat water and the pager goes off, you don't really know what to expect because the conditions are pretty much perfect, everyone's having a lovely time, so it's often something a bit more challenging, a bit more unexpected.
So we've got a fallen climber in the vicinity of Cattle Trough that have requested the ILB.
A climber has fallen from cliffs near Anvil Point, 2 miles down the coast.
Everyone happy?
The station's D-class inshore lifeboat is launched immediately.
When you hear that someone's fallen a considerable distance, you don't know what you're going to be presented with. That section of cliff is quite notorious. I've been to 2 or 3 recoveries of bodies of climbers. As fast as we go, sometimes that's just not fast enough.
The limestone cliffs around Anvil Point rise over 110 feet above sea level.
The cliffs in that area can be pretty tricky. There's some big boulders at the base of the cliff. There's some fairly sharp, jagged bits in there as well. Good for climbing, not necessarily good for extracting people from that position.
Seven minutes after launching, they reach the cliffs.
As we came round Anvil Point, we saw that there was another lifeboat which had been on passage out of pool. They'd heard the shout going on and they'd responded to the Coast Guard. They were able to see the casualty where they were, so they would direct us in.
The climber has landed on a ledge over 10 metres above the water's edge.
Okay, 2 metres on the nose, 1 metre.
The helm, Gav, gets volunteer crew members Neil and Becky ashore as fast as possible.
106.
I could see somebody waving, but they were well above eye level. I couldn't see the casualty.
Target.
We had to just clamber up the rocks. They're quite sharp when you can't clearly see a route, because often there's a gap between one and you might not be able to jump across from one part to another.
Hiya.
Now join me.
I'm here as well, all right?
The climber is a young woman, lying face down and immobile.
Just getting out some first aid notes here, and I'm going to do some checks on you while we wait for more help to arrive.
So your name's Becky, right?
Yeah, my name's Becky.
Can you move down a little bit so I can just see your face?
Yeah, I can move your hair a little bit.
I can see you.
All right, you've been very brave.
They pointed out where she'd fallen from. It was a long way. You don't need to fall any distance on a cliff for it to be quite shocking, but when you fall from almost the full length of the climb, it's really bad.
I'm just going to run my hands over, okay? If anything in particular hurts anymore, if I can see. I know that obviously you've knocked your head. I'll have a look at that in a minute.
The woman has fallen over 40 feet, around the same height as a 4-storey building.
Having fallen that height, my concern was spinal injuries or, some serious injuries possibly to the limbs as well. There's a risk of breaking of big bones, the pelvis, maybe the upper leg bones, where there could be a lot of internal bleeding and all of a sudden a casualty could crash. There was a lot of blood around the head area, so instantly I was concerned for head injuries. And although she appeared alert, she was chatting, there was always a concern that there could be more going on that I couldn't see.
Delta 752, Swan RB, go ahead.
Yeah, Roger, it's a female. She's fallen from the top, damaged both knees, left knee is certainly an open wound, and has some damage to her head as well. I think she's lost some teeth. So that's the initial assessment for now. We'll have more later. Over.
Do you require more assets on scene, ever?
Yeah, that would be good, actually.
The casualty has multiple injuries. The crew need to get her to urgent medical attention, but first they need to get her off the ledge.
I wondered if it's worth getting the IB1 and rolling on and then putting it straight in the stretcher.
There were various things that we were thinking about. How we're going to get her from where she is, how we're going to do that safely, how we're going to do it timely. The Coast Guard helicopter was on another job, so it was unavailable. So it was then down to us working with the Cliff Rescue team to think about how we were going to get that casualty to a place of safety and then ultimately to hospital.
With no helicopter available and a casualty with potential head and spinal injuries, it's down to Becky and the crew to keep her stable and conscious.
What I want to do is I'm just going to put my hand on your tummy to check your breathing rate, okay? So just carry on breathing as normal.
They must also work out how to safely evacuate the woman from the ledge with a 40-foot cliff above and over 10 feet of rocks below.
Can you count me 10, Neil?
Yeah. 10, 9, 8, 7.
That's okay, don't worry if you are, because I'm going to move you over. Neil, she's not feeling well, so I want to get into proper recovery position. If you can open that up, lay it alongside here. If you feel sick...
She was struggling to breathe, I think possibly due to the blood around her head and from her mouth, making that a little bit difficult, and just the position that she'd fallen in. Also, if somebody is feeling sick, and they may be sick, the recovery position is the best place to avoid any potential risk of choking.
But to get her off the ledge, the crew must turn the casualty over.
So what we're going to do, we're all going to come behind her, spread ourselves along her spine. Becky's going to hold the neck, the head in neutral alignment so it keeps nice and straight.
Yeah.
So it will be under Becky's command, the roll, okay?
Don't you worry about doing anything, Amy, because we're going to support you through this bit.
If you've got a risk of a spinal injury, you don't want to make anything any worse than it is. And you want to have as many people there to make that move as gentle and as safe as possible, because obviously our priority is to save a life, but ideally you want that life to be back to how it was, or at least as good as it can be. We just take every step very, very slowly and very careful.
We're just going to do a roll to get in the stretch because we've got uncomfortable breathing. So
our speedboard to go round the neck.
Yeah, should we do that?
A Coast Guard rescue team has abseiled down the cliffs to assist. They've brought a specialist spinal board to help move the woman safely.
How are you feeling? Breathing all right? Okay, yeah, the breathing's getting harder, so I want to roll as soon as possible. Let's go. Yeah, okay, so 1, 2, 3. Well done.
Oh, it was nice to see you.
Okay.
Nice
How's
to see
your breathing
you.
that way? Does it feel a bit better?
Okay, good girl.
Yeah.
Good girl.
Yeah?
A lot of the shout, I was talking to the back of Amy's head. Seeing her face just made me realise, you know, how young she was. I did feel a huge amount of responsibility because I wanted to give her the best care, to make sure we had the best plan to get her out of there.
Ian, while you're there, can you just see if there's an obvious head injury on that side? Because I want to put a dressing on, but I think a lot's come from the mouth and the nose.
As the crew prepare to evacuate the casualty, an update comes in from the Coast Guard.
It became apparent as the job was evolving that the helicopter was actually going to be available a little bit quicker than we thought it was.
Okay, Amy, the helicopter's coming, so you might get a little ride. I suspect they'll put you in a basket and away you go, okay?
Please.
It's always nice when you hear that the helicopter is coming to help. They are, you know, the cavalry as far as we're concerned in that sort of situation.
You've been very brave.
We're all done with the moving.
Okay.
We've got great training and we can do a lot, but we're not paramedics. So knowing that the helicopter was coming, certainly good news, and it really, from our point of view, it's getting towards the end of what we're there to do. We're doing the transfer, handing over to the person that's going to get them to hospital.
Okay, well done. Okay, what I want to do now,
Well done, Amy.
is I'm just going to lean over you, because when the helicopter comes in, it'll make some of the pebbles fall.
that.
That's it.
Yeah.
What about that one?
After nearly an hour treating the casualty at the scene, the Coast Guard helicopter arrives from its base at Lyon Solent.
Everybody, take the casualty.
I told her to keep looking at the helicopter as she went up and that she'd be in hospital soon. Can't say I've got a smile because she's probably in pain, but I could feel a bit of a smile coming through her voice, and that was quite reassuring. One of the hardest parts really is that you know you've done everything you can, but you don't actually know the outcome. You've been there for a long time, getting casualty moved, and then you start to think about what's actually happened to them, you know, how are they going to be treated.
The casualty was flown 30 miles to hospital in Southampton for emergency surgery.
We knew we'd done what we could, but I think just in the back of my mind was what was the level of her injuries and, you know, what type of recovery would she make?
I found out the next day that I'd broken my left eye socket and my cheekbone. I'd chipped one tooth. I broke my left wrist. I sliced open both my knees, and I had also broken one of my toes. From that height, probably could have died. I mean, you can die from far less height.
23-year-old climber Amy had come down to Dorset from London with her boyfriend Richard.
Richard had been telling me about all these times that he's gone and he's solo climbed, and it was so easy that I thought, well, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So I just quickly climbed up it and got to the top, and I was really excited. I've gone to lean back, and I just remember feeling the rope ping off the anchor point, and I remember twisting and yelling out Richard's name, and that's all I remember. I just remember waking up at the bottom. Just remember this woman kneeling down beside me, She kept talking to me and I kept talking to her. So yeah, I feel there was a connection there. Because in what is most likely going to be one of the worst moments of my life, she was the one guiding me through it. She was a superstar in my eyes.
I've got a huge amount of respect for Amy, even in that difficult situation. She was calm, she was brave, and, you know, was the best casualty she could be. It's quite an amazing experience to feel that you've been helpful to someone. And knowing that I can help somebody in such a situation is, I guess, something I'm quite proud of.
During the summer months, millions of people flock to our coasts and beaches, putting the 238 lifeboat stations around the UK and Ireland in a constant state of high alert.
Summer is silly season across the UK. We get jet skis, people on their inflatables, people who think it's great to go for a nice seaside day out because it's sunny, and maybes don't pay attention to what's happening in the sea.
The beach could be absolutely jam-packed on a summer's day. There's barely an inch of it that there isn't a little tent and a windbreak set up. Kids sprinting about everywhere. It's bedlam.
The peak of summer, we'll get 3 or 4 shouts in a day.
How we doing, you okay?
And none of them will take advice. They'll carry on until they're stuck, or, you know, and then they'll be all red-faced afterwards.
We call it silly season because it's quite simply silly how much time we spend down the lifeboat station. Everything else gets put on a back burner and you focus on lifeboats for pretty much 6 weeks solid.
Right, whenever you're ready.
Often you'll be out on a shout and then you'll come back and be tossed to something else on the way back in. Which is why it pays to be prepared, because you might be out for a lot longer than you had bargained for.
On the south coast, Brighton and Hove is one of England's largest seaside resorts.
I'd say Brighton's busy all year round, but for the beaches and all the way along the coastline, it's mainly the summer months. It's quite easy to get to from London or anywhere east or west. You know, Brighton's the place to be.
10 million day trippers visit Brighton every year. And on a busy summer's day, around 300,000 people can flock to the city and its beaches.
We get quite a high number of booze-related shouts. Maybe given the fact that almost every single arch on the seafront is a nightclub or a bar.
Brighton is the place where fun and the sea meet, and people think, you know, let's have the best of both worlds. Let's go and have some fun in Brighton, a couple of drinks and go for a swim. But most of the time, drink and water doesn't mix.
Early August. Brighton's holiday season is in full swing.
It was one of our Tuesday routine training sessions and was down the station a little bit early. Suddenly, everyone's pages went off. One makes you jump, but when there's all of them going off at once, you sort of have a bit more of a jump.
The crew are requested to bring their lifeboat to immediate readiness, meaning an urgent emergency call.
Immediate shouts like this happen very rarely, but when they do, they're basically saying that there's an immediate risk to life and they need a lifeboat there ASAP.
We've got someone clinging to the life ring over here.
A man is reported to have jumped over 10 metres from the end of the Palace Pier into the sea.
Our initial thoughts when someone is in the water is time critical, no question about that. We've got to get there as quickly as possible because they could disappear. You're thinking, was it an accident? Or have they done it on purpose, which has happened? Someone's jumped off the pier and he doesn't want to be rescued. Are they drunk? Have they taken drugs? Are they injured? They're all things that go through your mind.
To make matters worse, an offshore wind has picked up and sea conditions are deteriorating.
It was supposed to be slight seas, but it was a little bit lumpy. And under the pier, it kind of chunks up a little bit there. If anybody's anywhere near that, they'll get hurt.
The crew are all aware that the waters around the pier are treacherous, with fast-flowing currents and many dangers hidden below the surface.
The pier can be quite deceiving. You could walk up it one day and think, oh, it's not very high when the tide's in. It's sort of 3 to 5 metre drop, and then when the tide goes out, you could be looking at 10 to 15 metres, depending whereabouts you jump in. You never know what's underneath that. And we've had it before where people have jumped off at low tide and they've actually hit the bottom and come off really bad.
4 minutes after launching, the crew arrive at the pier.
As we approached, we got told it's on the west side, so I sort of come around the bottom end of the pier. We were having a really good scan, couldn't really see anything.
Looking for a person in the water, all you can see is above the head, basically, so it's very, very difficult to spot someone.
To make the search more complicated, the offshore winds are meeting an incoming tide, creating choppy sea conditions.
Worst case scenario is they've disappeared. Someone's seen them, they're a viable and credible witness, and they've gone. That is our worst case scenario.
As they search, 2 local council lifeguards have paddled out from shore and reached the casualty on the other side of the pier. But they're having trouble getting him out of the water.
As the Coast Guard called that in, I looked onto the other side and you could see 2 surfboards, which are the lifeguards that come out to rescue the man, and a casualty in the water as well.
Okay.
Hanging on to one of the dinghies off the pier.
Yeah.
They had him sort of held onto a rescue board and he was easily double the size of them.
Can you bring him to us?
The 2 lifeguards, 16-year-old Ella and 18-year-old Clen, were about to finish their beach shift when the immediate call came in over their radios.
Sea conditions had completely done like a 360, like from like being really flat and nice in the morning, like a current but not that strong, to like getting out there. I was fighting like the tide coming in, and I was fighting a swell as well, and the current. So it was, yeah, it massively changed. And I saw the size of the guy and I was a little bit like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to get him onto this board easily. He started sinking the front of the board and ended up flipping it. So I hit the back of the stanchion and he went under. I lifted him out, I don't know how, physics, adrenaline, stuff like that. There was a moment where I did say, this is really bad. So yeah, absolutely relieved to see a massive orange boat turn up to help us.
Are you all right getting back in?
Yeah, just quite.
Yeah. Well done, girls, good job.
Lifeguards done a fantastic job. Without them there, we definitely would have been looking for a person in the water face down. So for them too, it's definitely a life saved.
What's he got? Has he got any cuts, has he?
There was loads of onlookers on Brighton Pier, and the sort of bit that gave me a bit of shivers down my back was they just gave these 2 gals a massive round of applause.
So, Coast Guard, this is Brighton Lifeboat. Casualty recovered to the lifeboat. We're going to take him back to the boathouse. Could we also have an ambulance, please, as he's got quite a lot of cuts on him, and he's very drunk and disorientated. Right. We can chat about that when we're back there. Can you thank your 2 lifeguards? 2 girls done brilliant. Big congratulations and well done from them. Over.
Apart from some cuts and grazes from hitting the struts under the pier, the man seems uninjured.
We're going to get him to the boathouse and then take him straight upstairs.
45-year-old Gavin had come down to Brighton from Bromley on a day trip with friends.
Been drinking all day, drinking on the way down to Brighton. It wouldn't surprise me if I'd had about 20 pints at least. Ended up in the final bar at the end of the pier having a drink with my friends outside. One of my friends sort of said, oh, you wouldn't jump off there. And I was like, yeah, I would. One thing led to another where a little bet was made. Ended up drinking another couple of pints, and then after that, Dutch courage and all that, and then I decided to take the plunge, so to speak.
If we sort of average it out, maybe 15% of our shouts a year, someone's had alcohol or drugs and attempted to go in the sea, and most of the time they come off worse.
Please. I've been a fool. I've got a couple of grazes.
If they have made it and, it's just basic injuries, then they'll have a very, very stern word, not only from us, but from the police, the Coast Guard. At the end of the day, we're here to save lives. As long as we save that life or assisted in saving that life, that's all that matters.
So what we're going to do, we're going to get you some nice dry warm blankets now. We'll get rid of this one. We'll put a nice dry one.
I remember falling, obviously going into the water. I was looking up at my friends, joking about and saying, right, you owe me, for the bet.
So we've got some reasonable cuts in your area.
Next thing, big waves come over my face, swallowed a load of seawater. More waves kept hitting me, and more water I kept swallowing. Then I started to realise I was in a bit of trouble.
All right, let's go then. Let's have that.
I then noticed 2 lifeguards coming over on paddleboards. They was trying to get me onto their board, which wasn't very successful, possibly because of the amount of alcohol I drank that day. At that stage, the RNLI turned up. Basically like something out of Thunderbirds, they just seemed to pop up out of nowhere.
I am so sorry.
There's a bottle of water if you want some.
I am so sorry.
I was a bit embarrassed about what I'd done and couldn't believe I was actually in a lifeboat after being rescued out to sea.
We'll get you in nice and quick and then nice and warm at the station.
I think it was a job well done by everybody. The lifeguards handled this situation superbly. We took him on the boat and took him back to the boathouse. So it was teamwork by everybody, all the agencies. He was very apologetic, very, very apologetic, which is nice to hear because he's grateful.
Boom. Naughty boy chair.
The police was there, they gave me a bit of a stern talking to, said that they could arrest me for this, but if I kindly make a donation instead, they were prepared to let it go. So I was quite happy to make a donation, yeah.
Gavin donated all the winnings from his bet to the RNLI.
I've done a few stupid things in my time, but this is definitely the silliest one. I think I've got a little bit more respect for the sea. It's not something I will be repeating now.
Nearly 200 miles west of Brighton is one of the UK's most popular holiday spots, Cornwall. In the peak summer months, the county's population more than doubles with visitors. The former tin mining community of St Agnes lies on the north coast.
St Agnes is a great village. It's a really beautiful spot. It's got a lot of character, a lot of history. We all really respect the sea, and the lifeboat definitely has been the hub of that for a long time.
Just up from the town's beach, the St Agnes Lifeboat Station recently celebrated 50 years of service. Its current crew of 25 are a tight-knit unit, covering a rocky and dramatic stretch of coastline.
St Agnes is a wonderful place. Some beautiful beaches around, very rugged cliffs, a few extremely unforgiving spots. It's got some good surf, it's got a good community, and obviously it's very popular with tourists. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
One of the station's newer recruits, Laura, grew up in the village and has recently returned. She's setting up home with her partner, Matt.
Most people, they look at locality to a school or to where they do their recreation activities, but it definitely had to be as close as possible to the lifeboat station. We're both conscious the page you can go off at any time, but I think we're both quite adaptable. We appreciate that we've both got our passions, and lifeboat is one of Laura's passions.
Like all new volunteers, Laura started her training as part of the shore crew, though in terms of nautical knowledge, she may bring more to the station than most recruits. In 2015, she spent 9 months rowing over 8,000 miles across the Pacific with 3 other women.
Having completed the row and making it from mainland America to mainland Australia, we achieved 2 Guinness World Records. One was the first ever team to cross, and also the first ever all-female team to cross the Pacific Ocean and across the equator. It definitely has made me a lot closer to the sea, a lot more respectful. I remember there were times when we were being a washing machine of a sea state. You'd be smashed by a freak wave that would throw you off your seat and you think you're about to capsize. During those times, you can get quite angry with it and just be like, serious, this is relentless, kind of just give us a break. You feel like it's got a personality, as stupid as that might sound, but I guess that's what happens when you spend 9 months at sea.
July, early evening. A cool northerly breeze is bringing the temperature down. The St Agnes crew's pagers go off. There are reports of a paraglider losing control after launching from cliffs along the coast.
I was, I think, sort of second on scene. I just assumed, because I was only sort of about 8 months in, that I was just going to get involved with the launch. Adam, the helm, was already by the boathouse, and he'd sort of said, yeah, get yourself ready, because I'll take you out, basically. You're going to be on the crew.
This is Laura's first shout on the water as a crew member. Within minutes of getting kitted up, she's heading out to sea in the station's D-class lifeboat.
I could hear the Coast Guard putting out a Mayday relay. A Mayday relay is only used if somebody is in grave and imminent danger, so I knew it was serious.
The casualty was reported to be in the water off Newdowns Head, a popular paragliding spot 1 mile west of St Agnes. Although it's July, the sea's unusually choppy.
Newdowns Head has got a big sort of grass green area which gives you a good launch, but then it's a sheer drop directly down. The sea comes straight into the rocks. In big sea conditions, that wouldn't be a place that I'd want to be in the water.
A woman dialed 999 after seeing the paraglider fall over 200 feet from the cliff tops into the sea. A Coast Guard helicopter has also been scrambled to the scene.
Landing in the water does not always go well. There's a lot of people who get tangled in their lines, and that can go wrong. You don't know whether it hit the cliff on the way down, you don't know how it landed. There are so many variables. What we do know is you need to get there very quickly.
Just 4 minutes after launching, the D-class arrives at the foot of the cliffs. But in the swell, there's no immediate sign of the paraglider.
Paul and I are looking out of the boat to see what we can see, and I just remember coming round the corner and couldn't see anybody, couldn't see a chute, couldn't see anything. And then suddenly just spotted part of the chute.
They need to find the casualty fast. But with the parachute in the water, there's now an added risk to the crew. The hundreds of meters of lines that are attached to it.
You can't see the lines, and there's so many of them, and if your prop gets caught in that, then suddenly we're in danger of being now a boat that's going to get thrown onto the rocks as well.
They finally spot the casualty and head in bow first to avoid tangling the propeller.
You're alone?
Yeah,
one person?
Yes, I'm alone.
Okay.
Any medical?
No.
Heart surgery?
Everything is okay.
When we got him on the boat, he made it quite clear that he thought he was okay. But his eyes were so wide that it was evident he was really, really shaken up, and his adrenaline levels were through the roof.
I did a mistake.
The adrenaline could be masking broken bones, it could be masking a spinal injury of some description, even a compression injury from hitting the water, because I don't know how hard he hit the water.
Okay to use?
Compression injuries can occur if the spine is crushed by the impact of landing on water from height. But this can only be assessed in hospital. The crew must get the casualty to A&E urgently.
And because we couldn't get that clarity of that wrist, then rightly so, the helm made the call to say the safest and best way for him is actually to go up in the helicopter, and they can take him straight to hospital, and he would be there within 10 minutes.
The Coast Guard helicopter is coming in overhead. The crew's immediate priority is to prepare the casualty to be winched up. But English is clearly not his first language.
Our quickest way to get you back up there is this.
Okay.
Okay?
The paraglider seems happy with the plan, but transferring from a small lightweight lifeboat to a hovering helicopter is a complicated and dangerous maneuver.
Okay, visors down.
To allow the Coast Guard winchman to land onto the boat, The crew need to position the 5-metre-long D-class directly under the helicopter.
Getting in that position to winch, it's almost the eye of the storm. The downdraft is phenomenal. It's quite violent, quite turbulent, it's quite dramatic.
I was really surprised with how strong that downdraft is. It kicks up the sea hugely, so I was just concentrating on making sure I had hold of the paraglider and was holding on myself that we just didn't get ourselves into additional trouble, and it was all safe.
The helicopter and lifeboat's positions are aligned. The Coast Guard winchman now needs to land perfectly on a 1-metre square space in the lifeboat's bow.
The D-class is quite a small boat. You've got the helmsman and 2 crew, and then when you get a casualty in there, there's significantly less room. When you put the variable of trying to land a winchman in there as well, it takes some incredibly good teamwork from the helicopter and the boat.
To make matters even more complicated, the helm must keep the lifeboat moving at a constant speed across the choppy water. The casualty, Wolfgang, is an experienced paraglider over from Hamburg on holiday.
And then keep your arms down. All right.
Before launching, he had sought advice from some locals.
It's normal to speak with the local flyers to check what I have to know. I'm the first time at that place, so I checked in and I misunderstood her. She told me, don't go to the front. But I understood, go to the front. I want to fly, of course, and my English is not very perfect, and I thought, okay, it makes sense, and I went there. But there was no uplift. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Paragliders rely on a mix of wind and thermal uplifts to fly. With neither to fill his parachute wing, Wolfgang soon lost power and started falling at speed.
At that moment, I had the possibility to land, no problem. But I didn't. I went on, and sometimes later I know, okay, you go to the water.
All right. Yeah.
When I landed at the sea, first I decided to put up my equipment. Try to be calm, try to take care of your power, and wait. But without help, I would not be able to leave the sea. There's no chance. The cliffs are so high, you can't climb them. And to swim to the next beach, I think, impossible. Too far away, the water is cold, and I don't have the power to swim. I think I would go to the ground. Yeah. No chance. I saw it on the horizon and I was very happy. I said, oh, there's help. So quick, so quick. I felt very lucky at that moment. Yeah, very, very lucky. When I reached the helicopter, the man asked me if I'm on holiday there, and he asked me how much time is left. And I said, oh, we just start here. And so he said, oh, maybe we'll see you again. and I love it. I only could laugh.
Yes, Dave! Yahoo! Never done that before.
Wolfgang was flown the 7 miles to the Royal Cornwall Hospital in Truro. He arrived just 16 minutes after the St Agnes crew were paged.
I think it's staggering, really, to get the first informant phone the Coast Guard, and within 16 minutes, the person's in hospital. I think that's really quite impressive.
There's a lot of water in that.
It was a first shout. I mean, I didn't know any different, and it wasn't until I came back into shore that everybody was like, crikey, that was your first shout. That's quite an interesting shout to have.
I think it's quite an epic first shout, really. Helicopter transfer, paraglider in the water, yeah. But she was exceptionally calm and composed. She did incredibly well.
After being checked over in hospital, Wolfgang was released with no injuries.
He was very close to getting washed onto the rocks, risk of the hypothermia, risk of drowning. It was good to feel like we'd saved a life and we'd done a good job.
It was the onlyest chance for me to stay alive. I recognize it now and later, at that moment not. It was very quick, everything, oh, there's a boat, okay, there's help. But when I thought about, I thought, okay, without them, it was the last day of my life.
"340 miles away in North Yorkshire is the seaside town of Redcar. Lying near the mouth of the River Tees, Redcar has a long industrial history.
Redcar's an interesting place. We've got the North Sea next to us. Behind us, we've got the former steelworks and we've got the chemical works. Down to the south, we've got the North Yorkshire Moors, and we've got some outstanding natural beauty there. We have 7 or 8 miles of golden sand, which draws visitors at all times of the year, but particularly in summer.
Our silly season, as we call it, is always busiest time when the kids are off and the beaches are full. That's our heightened activity. Some of the typical silly season shouts will be people getting caught up by the tide, people in toy dinghies, in toy canoes, just the general summer's activities that often require a bit of assistance.
Redcar's beaches have drawn in pleasure seekers since the Victorian times. But even on a summer's day, the seas here can be as cold as 12 degrees.
The North Sea is typically rougher than most, especially on our coastline, because of the rocks and the scars and the breakwater, which can funnel more surf towards us. So for people that don't know what they're going out in and how quick it can change, it can cause more problems for us. Things can, and they do, go wrong.
A July evening. The temperature is dropping fast, and a 20-mile-an-hour wind is blowing directly offshore. The Redcar lifeboat station receives an emergency call from the Coast Guard.
The initial information we received about this job was that there was a person in a dinghy getting blown offshore.
You're thinking, where is he? He's got a life jacket on, any safety gear. You're thinking, time of the essence, get there quickly and safely as possible.
Usually the station's D-class lifeboat would be launched with 3 crew.
Hey, Derek, we've got no crew yet.
But the urgency of this situation calls for an immediate launch.
On some occasions, we don't have the time to wait for another crewman. Although the people might just be turning up on station, you've still got a couple of minutes there where they need to get changed, get the gear on, then get across to the boat.
Calling channel 16 over.
We decided it would be best to go with the 2 guys, myself and Cameron, that were already kitted up.
Redcar LB, this is number Coast Guard. Good evening. You launched some service to a report of a small inflatable dinghy with 1 person on board drifting offshore. I request you proceed, locate and assist the person back to shore.
Our ETA, given this current state of tide, is approximately 7 minutes, sir. And crew list is 18 and 20, over.
The casualty was spotted by a member of the public drifting out towards the Teesside wind farm, almost a mile offshore.
The elements were working against the casualty. He had the tide running against him and also the breeze blowing him back off the beach. The further offshore you get, these little wavelets start to become bigger and bigger. All these cheap dinghies need to do is burst or get a rip in them, and it changes the whole job completely, from someone sat on top of a toy dinghy to somebody in the water.
Beyond the wind farm, there's a major shipping lane. After that, the full force of the North Sea.
The North Sea temperature doesn't vary that much, regardless of the season. If somebody ends up in the North Sea with no intervention, you can end up with hypothermia, and then ultimately, you will now end up as a fatality.
After a sprint out to sea, the lifeboat reaches the area where the casualty was reported to have been. Seconds later, they spot him, dressed in summer clothes and drifting out towards the wind farm.
Hey, old fella! What are you doing out here? Having a paddle? How are you planning on getting back, like? You paddle back? In this wind, against this tide? I don't think so, matey. We'll get you a shot, mate. We'll take you back.
He was sat in water in the bottom of the dinghy. He was cold and damp, and 2 little plastic oars he had was getting nowhere. As he tried to row, he just spun round in circles.
We can't leave you out here. One, you've got no life jacket, you've got no safety gear. If that happens, it's on us now.
I don't think the casualty was aware of his predicament. Although he was trying to paddle back in, he wasn't conscious of where he was heading. And the oar is as big as your forearm. You're not going to make any ground.
After some gentle persuasion, the man finally accepts he's not going to be able to make it back to shore by himself.
We have the casualty safely on board in a small £10 dinghy, no safety equipment. He's on board now, sir. We're going to return him back to the beach.
Roger. Thank you very much.
You're a Redcar lad. Where are you from? Dallo.
After speaking to the casualty face to face and pretty close up, it was evident that he was intoxicated. You could smell it on his breath and the way he was acting as a drunk person would.
In there, mate.
Stop blowing in there.
He'd obviously had a good day on the beach with a couple of cans, which made him believe that he was quite all right to put to sea in his little toy dinghy.
How much did it cost you? 12 quid. Oh, well, there goes the cap.
So unfortunately, the valves accidentally fell over the side. We weren't as disappointed as the individual was, but we're now safe in the knowledge that that dinghy's not going to return to sea anytime soon. Without help, I don't think this individual would have made it back ashore. The oar was only small, and plus being intoxicated, there's also exhaustion coming into it, and then that brings the temptation of, oh, just bin the dinghy off and I'll try and make a swim for it. So, no, I don't think he'd have made it ashore by himself.
8 minutes after launching, the crew arrive back at the shore.
Mile and a half? Mile?
At the time, I don't think the casualty was grateful that we were there, stopping his summer's evening cruise. But once he did get back ashore, I think it dawned on him how far out he was, and I think his attitude changed a little bit. We never judge people. It's happened. That's what we are there for, to go out and perform that rescue. It's what we train for. It's what we're here for.
Sir, just to confirm that's the casualty now safely ashore, and we'll shortly be returning to station, over.
Roger. Thank you. Out.
"380 miles south of Redcar, just off the coast of Normandy, France, are the Channel Islands. Although the British government is responsible for these 7 islands' defence, they're not officially part of the United Kingdom. With just over 100,000 permanent residents, Jersey is the most densely populated.
Jersey does feel like a unique community. We've got the Jersey way, as people call it. It certainly is a different feel to being in the UK, and it's different to being in France, but I think there's a very good, healthy relationship between the two, so we've got the best of both worlds, I think.
There's a massive difference between who's using the coastal waters between summer and winter. So in winter, it tends to be commercial fishermen and the main port of St Helier using its commercial traffic. But in the summer, we have all of the tourists, we have all of the locals whose boats are only able to be moored out in the outlying harbours between the months of May and October. So we have a really different dynamic over the summer months than we do in the winter months.
The RNLI has had a lifeboat in Jersey since 1884, with stations now in St Helier in the south and St Catherine's on the east coast.
Our patch varies a lot. The north coast is really rugged, beautiful headlands. Around the east of the island is a nice bay of Grouville, which is sandy, flat beach. The southeast corner is extremely rocky. On a low spring tide, it looks like a moonscape, but on the high spring tides, you don't see any of that, and you won't know that that's sat there underneath that water. So if you don't know your way to navigate around that southeast corner, it can be treacherous.
August bank holiday weekend. The St Catherine's crew are paged.
It was fairly early on a Sunday morning, so I don't think I'd got up at that stage, so the pager was my rude alarm.
A yacht has grounded just off the southeastern tip of the island.
This boat had found itself in an area which is really hazardous from a navigational point of view, just rocks everywhere.
On this stretch of coast, a maze of rocky outcrops lurks just below the surface, ready to catch out the unwary sailor.
We weren't aware of the condition it was in, weren't aware whether it suffered any damage. So it was important for us to go and assist him to find out what had gone on.
At the moment, there's just enough water for the lifeboat to make it to the yacht, but it's a tricky journey along narrow channels.
We had to navigate to him, not using the normal inshore route that we would use because there wasn't enough water. So we had to navigate around the reefs to get to him, but we needed to make sure there was enough water there first. So it was a bit of a catch-22. We just had to nose in, using the plotter and having someone spot for anything that wasn't charted.
It's a slow, painstaking journey out. Until they arrive on scene, the crew have no idea how serious the situation is aboard the yacht.
I think the danger the yacht was in was twofold. It was that it had potentially damaged itself as it came in under the cover of darkness, that it had hit something, and therefore, as the tide rose, if there were a hole in the boat, for example, then the boat may not float the way it's meant to float. So that on the one hand, and the other hand is getting out of that area safely. If you hadn't hit something coming in, the chance of him hitting something going out was pretty high.
After a tense journey out, the crew finally make it to the yacht. To their surprise, they discover a man from the local town aboard. Retired fisherman Howard spotted the yacht from shore, stranded on a sandbank at first light.
I suppose you could say I'm a little bit of an unofficial lookout. I'm always aware of what's going on, and I've got my VHF radio that I listen to, and I scan the bay quite regularly with the binoculars. And, you know, if it's anything I think it's important, I'll report it to the Coast Guard.
So you just walked out this morning, did you?
Sorry?
You just walked out this morning, did you?
I just walked out, yeah. So I can see this from my room. Well, I got up fairly early as normal, about 6 or maybe a little before, and I noticed that there was a large yacht laying on her side, dried out. So I thought, well, not where he should be, not a good place to be. I took my 2 dogs, my 2 Jack Russells, and when I get down there, there's a Frenchman aboard. So I asked him what was, going on, how he'd ended up there, and he said he was going to St Helier and obviously went aground. So I thought, well, when she floats, we'd start the engine, pull up the anchor, and just motor to Goree. But unfortunately, the battery had no life in it, the engine wouldn't start, the anchor winch wouldn't work, so the scenario had got sort of changed a little bit.
To complicate things further, the tide then came in, stranding Howard and his dogs aboard the yacht.
Well, that's part of it. Seafarers will always help each other, even if it means putting yourself in risk. That's the sort of unwritten law of the sea.
The Frenchman's yacht righted itself when the tide came in, but with no engine power, the crew decide to tow him to nearby Goree harbour. They attach the 2 boats side by side to help manoeuvre safely back through the narrow, rocky channels.
Donc, tu veux aller où après? Alderney, okay. So what are you going to do in Alderney?
I have a meet with an English guy. He's actually selling from Anvil.
Oh, yeah.
And the first have to pay beer.
There's plenty of beer in Alderney.
Sorry?
There's lots of beer in Alderney.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
I really appreciate a lot.
Yeah.
With Irish coffee.
Very good.
So, only freedom on the sailing boat. That's the only possibility.
Yeah? Yeah. Hopefully not in August.
He seemed blissfully unaware of the position he'd managed to get himself into. He seemed very nonchalant about the whole thing, which was odd, but it was quite refreshing in some ways because it just meant we could get on and do what we needed to do without having to deal with a stressed person.
You are a cousin of Kevin Costner?
No. Far from.
You see the movie with Kevin Costner? He's for Lifeguards in the USA.
No, I've not seen that.
He was a swimmer.
Okay.
Go rescue people.
Okay.
Helicopter, boat.
Yeah.
He was a nice, friendly guy, just on his way up to Alderney, and found himself run aground off our coast. He didn't realise the landscape, and to get where he was, he had to come across some nasty-looking reefs. We were really surprised that he managed to get there unscathed.
After 35 minutes towing, the crew bring the yacht into Gorey Harbour.
He just wants to try and charge up.
With the Frenchman back ashore, Howard's work is done. He and his 2 dogs head home.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, he seemed a sort of bit of a hippie guy, but I spoke to him, quite extensively on the way back, and he'd been travelling the world and had business interests. He certainly was wide awake. He was a competent guy. I think he just got it totally wrong. If you can help someone, it's not a bad thing to do, is it? We shook hands and said merci bien sort of thing. It was a good story to tell in the pub in the evening.
The lifeboat crew hand over to the Coast Guard, then prepare to head back to St. Catherine's.
So when you go to France, visit me. Or maybe a very good, sexy girlfriend.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
See you around.
Okay.
Okay.
Merci, au revoir.
If the Coast Guard hadn't been notified of this sailing vessel being in this place, who knows what might have happened to him. But he was the sort of chap that would have put a sail up and thought, let's crack on and move on to Alderney, because it's the sort of persona he gave. He wasn't fussed, wasn't phased.
He said he was a Commodore, so I think he's got lots of maritime experience. Who knows?
I don't think a Commodore in the French Navy would get himself into that predicament. I think he would have probably navigated using charts or a chart plotter rather than just luck.
Come see my 60 girlfriends.
After a long recovery, Amy is back climbing, with her boyfriend Richard by her side.
Many people question why I'm still climbing. Sheer hard-headedness. I've pulled it off just by not giving up. It's taken me longer than I would like to admit to get to this point, but I feel like everything's back on track, and the only way to go is up.
We got you, mate, we got you.
The foam's come out of his mouth. He was ghastly, he was grey, he was white.
Unconscious diver, I'm thinking they're going to be dead.
I would say it's right up there with some of the worst conditions I've been out in.
Contact!
I'm shaking. I was just getting dragged towards the rocks. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get out.